Okay, well, thank you very much, Matthew. Thank you to the Commission. My name's Rob Salmond. I work for a firm called Polity. The Polity works mainly with the Labour Party and also with other progressive groups, some of whom are trying to drive turnout in this election. So what I want to do first of all is talk about this issue of, where I would do that? Pointed at you. Is that working? Dude, look at this.
Oh, you're stuck.
I tell you, can you just hit the button for me? Is that okay?
It wasn't me.
Okay, while we're getting the tech sorted out, one of the questions that's come up in the conference already is high turnout a good thing? And my claim is yes, it is, because high turnout drives, one more please, drives that part of government of the people, for the people, by the people, that's by the people. If more people show up, government is more by the people. And Matthew is an excellent chair, but I worry for the Commission that Matthew is leading them up the garden path a little bit with what he said before, because if the Commission were to run a series of ads, but they were dusty, boring ads and only in English, and open a bunch of polling booths, but only really in rich areas, so poor people had to drive further, and so forth. They might have fulfilled their legislative role, but they're going to get criticised anyway. The Commission's role, all of our role as, if you like, political insiders, you're something of a political insider just by virtue of the fact that you wanted to come here for the day. All of our role is to make democracy as accessible and as relevant as possible to everybody else, because it's not our democracy, it's their democracy, and it's our job to serve them rather than the other way around. The role of political parties is to look after their own flock. We don't apologise one little bit for that. We have a lot of things to do at election time, and turning out someone else's voters isn't one of them, okay? So political parties over time have developed a large number of tools that they use to try and achieve this goal. I'm showing you just one here. I've munged up the data a little bit, so I'm not giving away any secrets. This is what an interest group uses to try and figure out, using public data, where some non-voters might be. This is a part of the Christchurch East electorate. And once we see that there are a lot of non-voters there, we might go and talk to them. And when we go and talk to people who we believe to be non-voters, and this dovetails in quite nicely with Mark's presentation, we talk to them in quite a different way than we would talk to people who always vote. And this is something that's a little bit new to New Zealand politics, but it's a growing trend around the world. If someone always votes, if they live in an electorate or they live near polling booths where turnout is always through the roof, but it splits 50-50 between our side and Matthew's side, then we might talk to them in one way. We might say, here are our great policies that are fantastic, and here is their promise that they didn't fulfill. If we're talking, however, to people who we think might be non-voters, we're going to talk to them very differently, and we're going to try, as best as we're able, to take on board the lessons that Mark is teaching us in a general way. So, for example, when we see, this is the local MP, he's the MP for Parliament, Grant Robertson, one of his teams going out around Wellington, when they're talking to people who they think might not be regular voters, they will do so in a way that accentuates the positive. First of all, not by talking about the problem of non-voting, which we've learned is a good way to have more people not vote, but instead to talk about the 2.2 million people who are going to have their say this year, and you ought to be one of them, right? That's one way of keeping it positive. Another way of keeping it positive, if you don't think you have, if you don't think the person you're talking to votes all the time, is to talk about why voting is great. Talking to all of you about why voting is great, with the greatest of respect, is a waste of my time, because you already vote. That's not convincing you to do something that you wouldn't otherwise. And the point I want to end on here, this is going to be a little bit challenging, I think. This is a card that was delivered through millions of mailboxes in the United States in 2012 by an interest group called Move On. In the United States, everybody has everybody's voter turnout history. They know whether you voted, but they don't know who for. And so they send people a report card that says, in this case it says, Dear Benjamin Fenster, you voted in 2 of the last 5 elections. The average in your neighbourhood is 3. You are below average. And that's telling a non-voter that they are alone. that within their neighbourhood they are unusual, and that helps them vote. That's actually not the most aggressive version of this. The most aggressive version of this that they tested in the US is, "Dear Benjamin, I noticed that you didn't vote last time. Did you know that your neighbour Jill did? And so did her husband Brian. And I look forward to writing back to you, Jill and Brian, after the election to tell you how you all got on this time." It turns out that that increases voter turnout 10%. 10% among those people. Now, admittedly, it's in the US, so it wouldn't have quite that effect here. But the reason why political parties around the world can't really do this is that it increases the volume of angry letters by about 60%, right? So if we, as the Labour Party, were to try this, if the data became available, we could do this with people, then we would get people into the booth all right, but they'd be really angry with us when they were in there. But there's nowhere in the booth to vote against the Electoral Commission. The Electoral Commission can do this and get people in the booth and not suffer the backlash that my party or Matthew's party or any other party would have. This is challenging because it's using a technique of psychology to try and cajole people into the booth. We can't use it because there's blowback. The Commission can. Thanks.